Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hi there, welcome to our ongoing discussion on drama. This is the drama week. In fact, we began this week with a detailed introduction to drama, how drama is a distinct literary form and what kind of sensibilities the audience would go through while watching the drama, and how different is drama from poetry and fiction and all that. Afterwards, we discussed different elements of drama, because in order for us to understand this particular genre of literature better, we need to understand its nature, we need to understand its scope. Therefore, we began with a detailed discussion on elements of drama, and afterwards we went on to discuss different types of drama, how drama can be very broadly classified into comedy and tragedy as something like occupying two ends of the spectrum, and in between you have other varieties of tragedy and comedy, you have tragicomedy and all that. Okay. So, in this class we are going to pick up a very interesting topic. Of course, it has some parallels to techniques we discussed in poetry and fiction. So, in this class we are going to discuss in detail dramatic devices. In other words, these are some tools, tricks and tactics that make the theatre tick. Of course, you can quickly identify the figure of speech involved here, right? Alliteration, all right, fine. Let us go ahead and see what are the different dramatic devices. In fact, as the title suggests, these are the devices, these are the strategies, these are the tricks or the techniques that a playwright employs or a dramatist employs in order to make the play more effective, right. So, it is a part of the wholesome experience called drama. So, what are those strategies, what are those techniques that make the play tick, work better? So, that is dramatic devices. Let us go ahead and take a look at a couple of dramatic devices. In fact, we have already discussed other literary devices, especially devices used in fiction, devices used in poetry. So, before we begin, probably what you can do, you can quickly pause this video for a while, depending on the time you require to recall some of those techniques that we discussed and see how many of them you can already recall, and then of course, we can go ahead and discuss certain other dramatic techniques. And in this class too, we have already discussed a couple of dramatic devices tangentially, while discussing other components, we might have as well discussed some of them. So, it is also a kind of a quiz, or you can also consider it as a recalling of those terms. If you are really familiar with that, that is absolutely wonderful. Let us go ahead and see. You have 20 seconds in case you can really identify the answer, that is really wonderful. What do you think is a soliloquy? Well, soliloquy is related to the dialogue delivery. We had discussed it, you remember, okay. Can you think of what a soliloquy is? No problem if you do not get it. If you have really got the answer, that is really wonderful, okay. A soliloquy, as we have already identified, refers to what the character speaks or what the actor speaks. It is not just a general dialogue. In fact, usually soliloquies are specialized dialogue delivery techniques that are generally reserved for protagonists, but that does not prevent a playwright or a dramatist from giving this technique to other minor characters too. But in other words, what happens here, a soliloquy is where an actor starts speaking directly to the audience, like it is like breaking the fourth wall, you remember, because in fiction we use a technique called stream of consciousness, wherein the character discusses all that they discuss, all that they keep thinking about in their minds with the readers. Similarly, soliloquy is a kind of a counterpart, it is a theatre counterpart for stream of consciousness in fiction. So, here the character or the actor goes on speaking whatever is there on their mind, and the audience listens to it, you know. So, so this is how the character or the actor breaks the fourth wall. Okay. So, this is something that we can keep in mind, right. Generally soliloquies are slightly longish, because you know in order to make the audience realize what is happening within the mind of the character, within the mind of the actor, you know, or you know the actor playing the role, what is happening in the mind of that character is revealed through the actor. This is what is called soliloquy. An actor representing the character, speaking out the thoughts of the character, so that the audience can know it directly. Okay, that is soliloquy. So, related to dialogue technique is one more thing. This is called an aside. We discussed it, right. How is an aside different from a soliloquy? Of course, you know, if you are clever, you must have already understood that it has got to do with you know soliloquy in a certain way. You are not wrong if you are under that impression. But there is a minor variation to that. Do you think you can spot how an aside is different from soliloquy? Now, an aside too is a solo dialogue. It is not a dialogue as such, it is a kind of a monologue. Like soliloquy, an aside too is a kind of a monologue. Okay. Here what happens, supposing there are two characters on stage, right, and when character A speaks something, character B cannot respond to that, maybe out of respect or maybe out of convention, maybe out of fear or whatever reasons, but he thinks something, he or she thinks something, you know, the character thinks something. So, how does the audience know? How does the audience know what this particular character has thought? This is what is called an aside. In other words, you know, there are two characters in an aside, whereas what the character speaks, the other character is not supposed to hear that, you know, the other character pretends he has not heard it, whereas the audience has heard it, right. Now, you understand this, right. In fact, especially during the Elizabethan age, this technique was used almost extensively. In fact, this particular, this prominent dramatic technique, you know, came to prominence especially during the Elizabethan time. So, you can think of any Shakespearean play, especially tragedy, you can you know come across these interesting asides. So, even here a character speaks, you know, it is a kind of a monologue, but there is another character who is not supposed to listen to what this character has said. Though this character has said it aloud, this character pretends, or he does not hear anything, the audience has heard it. Okay. That is what is called an aside. Okay. Now, here comes the third question. Again, you have about 20 seconds to answer it. See if you can guess this. We have partially answered this question now. What do you understand by a monologue? Of course, you can always pause this you know video and watch it later after you have got the answer. What do you think is a monologue? A monologue is generally a speech given by a particular character, you know, it is generally a long speech. So, something like imagine you know this particular drama as having a classroom scene. So, the teacher is teaching. So, generally it is a monologue, unless of course our classrooms become dialogic. Most of the times our classrooms are monologic, right. So, you can imagine a particular character goes on speaking, the audience is supposed to listen to that. That is implicit, there is an implicit element of dialogue there, because when the characters, the other characters, when they you know listen to this, they go on responding to the character making long speeches, either by nodding or by giving short responses and things like that, but they do not have any long speeches to give, you know. Therefore, you can call a monologue as you know where a character gives a long speech to other characters, and other characters also listen to it and respond to it, you know, non-verbally. So, this can be called a monologue. All right. So, we have learnt three techniques related to dialogue delivery. You have an aside, you have a soliloquy, and then you have a monologue. Isn't this an interesting development? Of course, we can't ask you to clap here, we can go for a confetti if you have really learnt it. This is really remarkable. Okay, yeah. After having learned these techniques related to dialogue delivery, let us go ahead and see what are the techniques we have in drama. Well, dramatic irony is a very, very important tool. Now, of course, we have already discussed irony. So, based on that, if you can quickly guess, if you can take a guess what a dramatic irony is, that would be wonderful. Any guesses? Even if you, again, all right, of course, you will have guessed answers, and you may not be altogether wrong. If you have heard the classes well, especially figures of speech and all that, you would have definitely answered this question. Okay. A dramatic irony is again, there are two types of dramatic irony, we can call it. One is a verbal irony, the other is situational irony. Okay. So, generally a dramatic irony takes place when the reader or the audience, if it is a novel, it is irony, if it is a fiction, it is the reader, if it is a play or a drama, it is the audience. Okay. So, when the audience has that information, whereas another character, another actor playing the role of a character does not know what it is. In other words, there is a discrepancy between what the audience knows, because the audience always knows more, either with the help of chorus or with the help of another character. Especially, now think of, when a character has used aside. Well, by convention, though there is another character on stage sharing the same space, they are not supposed to know what this character has said, right? Therefore, the audience knows more. So, using another technique called aside, a dialogue delivery technique that we have just learnt, dramatic irony can be created. Okay, that is one thing. And as I said, there are of course two types of dramatic ironies. One is verbal irony, the other is situational irony. If this irony is achieved using words, using dialogue, obviously it is called verbal dramatic irony. If the dialogue, if this irony is achieved using situations, because if there are situations that happen, that another character does not know, because this particular character has come on stage and performed something and the audience knows it, whereas the other character who comes afterwards does not know what the previous character has done, right, by convention. So, this can as well create dramatic irony. You can call this a situational irony. Okay. You can quickly recall why it is called an irony, how the similarities of irony, a figure of speech or a rhetorical device that you have learnt in one of the earlier classes, is related to this. You can definitely think of it and see whether that is relevant here or not. Okay. Now, having learned dramatic irony, let us go on and see some other techniques, or you can also call this class where we discuss certain keywords related to dramaturgy. We are we are going to discuss certain keywords related to dramaturgy. Some of them are very important, may act as cues, may act as techniques, may act as tools, devices, call what you may. These are a couple of things. Nemesis in drama means retribution, again named after the Greek goddess, Nemesis. So, it is like delivering justice. Supposing there is an evil character who has brought about a lot of difficulty, a lot of suffering to our protagonist. Towards the end of it, of course, in a tragedy, what happens, it is the protagonist who falls, right. The protagonist, they are unable to overcome the difficulties or the snares that the antagonist has spread for the protagonist, therefore, it is tragedy. Whereas, in comedy, well, the protagonist overcomes all that, and towards the end the evildoer gets some kind of befitting punishment. So, this is called nemesis, getting justice. Now, of course, we discussed something similar while discussing poetry, right. So, you can recall this particular term called poetic justice. Now, you think there are any correlations between poetic justice and nemesis? That is for you to think over. See if you can bring out the commonalities between poetic justice and nemesis. Of course, they may sound similar, but there are shades of differences, there are shades of differences. As a sensible reader, you are sure to bring out those kind of differences. Okay, nemesis. From nemesis, let us go on to discuss foreshadowing. Again, I am sure you are familiar with this term, because this is one of the techniques we learned during short fiction, or was it in fiction, during fiction? Yeah, one of those classes, right? Foreshadowing is a technique that either the narrator can use, an omniscient narrator, or the chorus can do if it is in drama, or a fellow character can do in a drama. So, in theatre, foreshadowing is said to occur when a playwright or a director sets up the play or event in such a way that they reveal what is going to happen, maybe after another act, maybe after another scene, something like that. So, sharing the information that is going to happen in the subsequent acts, in the subsequent scenes, this is called foreshadowing. And why does a playwright do it, or why does a writer do it? Do you think it is going to spoil the suspense element? Of course, if it is going to spoil the element of suspense, why would a writer do that, right? Why would a director do that? On the other hand, foreshadowing, they do not spill the beans totally, they use it in order to pique your interest, they in order to hook you onto the plot. A playwright or a director or a writer or a novelist use this particular technique, foreshadowing, casting the shadow before actually the person comes. That is the meaning, right? So, little bit of spilling the beans, not totally, but almost hinting at what may happen, so that you keep waiting for that moment. It is called foreshadowing. You are already familiar with this particular technique, all right. So, from here, let us go to learn another thing. Again, you must be really familiar with this technique, right? Pathetic fallacy. We discussed it as a poetic technique. We also discussed it as a fiction technique, So, it is also used in drama. What is pathetic fallacy? A pathetic fallacy, it is said, of course, it is not actually a fallacy as such, but a device, a literary device, where we can say that the nature around, or the setting in which this particular scene is getting enacted, it mirrors the sentiment, the mood, or the emotion of the character, especially the antagonist, right. Now, imagine here is a character, generally protagonist, who is sobbing, there is some kind of sad element, so therefore, he or she is sobbing, or they are sobbing, So, then in order to indicate that even in the nature, it is a kind of a gloomy atmosphere, maybe clouds are there, lot of lightning, in order to indicate tension, in order to indicate a gloomy context, there is darkness all around. So, here it is said that even the nature mirrors the predominant sentiment of the character. If the character feels gloomy, then the nature around is gloomy. If the character feels exuberant and cheerful, the nature around feels exuberant and cheerful. So, that this is some kind of finding an exterior correlation to the interior emotion, finding an exterior correlation with the interior emotion. This is what can be called a pathetic fallacy. Of course, why does a playwright or why does a writer use it? Because in order to magnify the effect of the mood, and also to say that probably there is some kind of a cosmic oneness that this character has achieved, all right. Therefore, even the nature also becomes a part of the inner weather, it is called inner weather matching the outer weather, right. That is called pathetic fallacy, a very important and a beautiful literary device. When used in a very judicious way, this can be a remarkable dramatic technique, it can heighten the impact in a very significant way. Pathetic fallacy. Okay. Now, from pathetic fallacy, let us go and discuss chorus. Again, this can be a technique, this can be an element, and this can as well be a part of the character, chorus. Of course, when we come to discussing the origins of drama, we are going to shed a little more light on chorus, but for time being what we can say, chorus is a group of performers. Well, this group can range anywhere between 12 and 30, earlier it went on to 50 and things like that, but the modern play generally makes use of 12 and 30. Sometimes it can as well be a group of 5 or 6 if there is a constraint on the availability of the actors. You can even make it 4 to 5 who sing, in order to bring in the element of music. That's one. In fact, chorus serves very many purposes. In fact, chorus is an integral component of theatre. Chorus is an invariable part of drama, because they perform very many roles. One, they add in the element of music, and second, they also act as omniscient narrators. In fact, chorus is a dramatic counterpart for omniscient narration in fiction. There in fiction, what does an omniscient narrator do? They explain the situation so that the readers can know, so that the readers can know better what is happening there. Similarly, chorus also does the job of interpreting the scene for us, or they also do the job of common citizen, common people who hold a certain opinion against the protagonist or the antagonist, anything like that. And they also are used in foreshadowing. In fact, through chorus, a playwright can employ club chorus with foreshadowing and reveal to the audience what may happen in subsequent slides. So therefore, chorus performs a various role. In fact, chorus performs various roles. Generally, the chorus wears masks in order to show that it's a kind of an indistinguished mob, a kind of common mob. So generally that's the convention. So chorus, the presence of chorus is there right from one of the, it's the first element to have been there when the drama was born, and that element has survived. Chorus has survived even to this day. So if there is one element that has sustained throughout drama, probably it's chorus, because earlier music was there. There are a lot many plays where music has been done away with, and there were a lot many characters, something like that. So chorus has been a very predominant feature of drama ever since drama was born, something like this, chorus. From chorus, let's go and discuss other performance devices. So far what we have done, in fact, we have brought in a subtle distinction between techniques used related to the text called the play and the performative component of the play, because remember, it's a collaborative venture. Drama is a collaborative venture, because in order for a text to come alive, you need actors who perform various characters, who perform various roles, and they are the ones who add life to the text here. You have already we have already discussed that, that, right. So here the next part would be certain devices that a director makes use of, or an actor makes use of, or a dramatist makes use of when it comes to enhancing performance, the acting capabilities, the performative component of drama. Okay. So let's go and in fact, these again there are subdivisions here, techniques related to, let's say, there are 4 broad categories in which performative techniques can be clubbed. Devices concerning voice, devices concerning body, devices concerning movement, and then the use of space. So we can discuss dramatic techniques concerning all of them. Okay. Now when it comes to voice, what are the dramatic techniques, what are the techniques? Now remember, not all of us are perfectly suited to perform in a play, because in order for us to be good performers, good actors, we need to have certain characteristic features, especially we need to have certain vocal properties. Well, these vocal properties sometimes are God given, as they say. You have acquired them genetically. well, you have been blessed with a good a sound box. As a result of it, you have extraordinary voice. Think of the voice of Amitabh Bachchan, for instance, something like this. And this vocal properties can also be developed under proper training. You can also enhance certain various the vocalic part of what you speak. The first thing is pitch. So these elements are also useful in if you want to enhance your communication skills, especially these are elements that if you want to improve your pronunciation skills, your phonetic skills, you also need to have a sound understanding of these sound properties, okay, a sound understanding of these voice properties. Therefore, let us discuss them. Pitch. Pitch is how shrill a voice is, or how deep a voice is, how somber, how thick, how shrill a voice is. It's because if there is a character that is very timid, and if you want to give it a very thick and a deep voice, it may not suit there, right. Therefore, not all vocal properties are suitable for all types of characters. So, you need to identify a character, you need to identify an actor whose vocal properties are such that they can perform the role of a timid character, something shrill, weak tone and things like that. On the other hand, imagine there is a very deep character, a very intense character. You need a very intense voice there, a deep voice or a bass voice. So, that is when you have to identify that. So, if you can modulate it accordingly, that is remarkable. Of course, there are very many gifted actors who can do beautifully, who can bring in wonderful variations when it comes to pitch, but if it is not possible, then at least identify a role that better suits you, something like that. The second is pace. It is related to the speed with which dialogue is delivered. The speed, the pace with which you speak the dialogue, it is related to that. So, you can't speak very fast because you lose out the audience. You can't also speak very slow because again audience may get bored with what you are doing. You need to have an optimum pace for the type of the role you are doing. Therefore, that is something that you have to keep in mind. Pauses. Pauses are very, very important, right. Like in poetry, so in drama, pauses play a very important role, because especially there are playwrights like Harold Pinter, Nobel laureate, who make extensive uses of pauses in their play, because pauses make not just the characters think, they also make the audience think, and they are also used to build tension, they are also used to build very many things. Pauses, silences, how do you bring in? Then projection. Projection is at what level you elevate your voice so that the audience can listen to that. Now, supposing it is a whisper, you can't shout as if the entire everybody if you are saying a secret has to be said in this way, or somebody is very vehement and speaking, they have to elevate their tone in such a way that even if there are 100 characters, 100 members in the audience, they should be able to listen to you, something like that. So, this is related to the elevation and projection of your sound, and also reducing it when the role demands it. So, this is what is called projection. Cueing is very important. In fact, usually the director does it. This is giving clues for the next character to speak. Sometimes if the character forgets, if the actor forgets what to speak or when to speak their dialogue or delivery, cueing is done so that the other character can pick up, other actor can pick up and start speaking. So, these are voice devices. Okay. So, let us quickly take a look at some more voice devices. Accent, breathing, emphasis. Accent is very, very important, right. Now, imagine you are playing the role of a villager and you are speaking in a very sophisticated English, that does not go well. So, you have to pick up an accent that best describes the character, or that best describes a society or a culture. That needs to be done. Then inflection, a proper modulation of the voice, because the ups and the lows, all these things have to be kept in mind. Breathing techniques are very, very important, because if the dialogue is, especially in a soliloquy where you need to deliver a longish dialogue, you need to know when to take breath, otherwise it can give awkward pauses. Therefore, breathing is very, very important. Volume and articulation too. So, these are some voice devices that can be kept in mind. So, when it comes to body devices, the second type of performative techniques, body devices related to your they relate to your posture, your gesture, your expressions and eye contact. So, when you are speaking with another character, unless the role demands you not to look into the eyes of the character, you need to look. Generally in the play, you need to look at either the character or at the audience, depending on what the situation demands. Eye contact is very, very important. Body awareness, remember, for an actor, in fact, drama makes use of two languages. In fact, in any dramatic performance, there are two languages invariably involved. One is the language in which the script is appeared, the play has been written. If it's an English play, it's written in English. If it's a Kannada play, it's written in Kannada. A Bangla play or a Japanese play, things like that. That's one language. The other necessary language, common language for drama, is the language of body. So, an actor who performs in a play needs to be acutely aware of the body language. In fact, body language is something that comes naturally to all of us. Remember, before a child picks up any language, a child is gifted with body language. That is the reason why when even before the child has learned to communicate properly, if it feels uncomfortable, it starts crying. If it feels very comfortable, it starts smiling. These are the elements of body language. So, once an actor is aware of the complete potentialities, limitations, nature and scope of their body, then it helps them perform better. Therefore, an active understanding of body language is very, very important for an actor. Gesture is related to movement of the part of the body, and posture is the way the character stands. Now, imagine, as again, if there is a timid character, they can't stand with their with their palms on the hips and in a very brave way. So, postures too play an important role, because postures have to accompany the situation, the role, character and all those things. So, these things can be kept in mind. And when it comes to movement, movement is related to, of course, it's called kinesics and non-verbal. You find a lot of correlations between non-verbal communication and the language, especially performance language of the performance. So, movement, we use the word called again, for body movement and all that, we use the word called kinesics in non-verbal communication. So, again, so you need to know the timing, because if it's a slow dance, you need to know the tempo, you need to understand the music, you need to understand the tempo and move accordingly. If you make very abrupt moves, then what happens, it prevents the audience from enjoying the play in a beautiful way. It is it's not a, that's why it's called a kinesthetic experience. The aesthetics that is related to the movement is called kinesthetic. So, the kinesthetic component, if it is compromised, if it's diluted, then it prevents the audience from enjoying the play completely. Then direction is related to the movement, the way the actors move. If it's a forward movement or a backward movement, diagonal, sideways, what kind of again, all these things are generally a sensible playwright would have left a detailed stage instructions for actors to perform. But of course, there are many playwrights who leave that discretion to a director. That is left to the convention. Energy is again the vigor with which actors make the movement, the vigor, energy with which actors make movement. This is related to movement. Finally, we have and again in movement we have other things, ensemble awareness. It's a French word. Ensemble stands for, if it's a chorus, it's always in a group, or if a particular situation demands it, the mob, in a particular scene, mob, they need to move in a cohesive way, so this is called ensemble movement. So, that has to be kept in mind. It should be in a very harmonious way, it should be in a uniform way. And then we need to know pathways, the pathways, how do you enter, is it a straight entry or a curved entry or a zigzag path, when you are making movements, when you are exiting, when you are entering into the stage, an active understanding of pathways. So, these are some things that have to be kept in mind. Yeah, finally we have proxemics, which is related to the use of space, you know. So here again in nonverbal communication too, proxemics play a very important role, right. If you want to establish good rapport, you need to be aware of, you know, different distancing, social distancing that you need to maintain, because there are 3 different zones. One is a very intimate zone where people who are closest to you can enter, you know, something like less than 1 feet distance, you know, 1 foot distance, less than 1 foot distance. So let us say between 2 and 5 foot, you know, 5 feet, then it is an intimate zone. People, I mean not an intimate zone, it is called a private zone. People close to you, maybe close friends can come. Then there is a social zone, then there is a public zone, something like that. So an active understanding of this is very essential for an actor, because depending on the relationship between the characters, depending on the situation, depending on the context in the play, a character has to maintain that space while moving, you know. So even out of, you know, slip of their mind, they cannot enter into an intimate zone if the character does not demand it, if the situation does not demand it. Therefore, an active understanding of personal space, general space, you know, intimate space, ideas related to these things can definitely help you know, an actor perform all these things, all right. So I am sure these an active understanding of these tools, these techniques, these keywords related to drama and theatre will have enhanced your own understanding of it. So I mean that is how we are going to complete the first week, beginning with the introduction of drama. We discussed various elements of drama, we discussed, you know, different types of drama, and of course in the final class of the first week of drama, we are ending it with you know, an active discussion of different you know, stagecraft, dramaturgical devices, so that, you know, we know how to understand a play better, how to appreciate a play better, all right. So in the next class we come up with something more interesting. Until then, bye bye.